Why so many tattoos, old man? Did you run out of paper or did you just lose a lot of bets in port? The question hung in the air of the briefing room like the smell of ozone before a lightning strike. It came from the back row, delivered with a smirk by N. Miller, a 23-year-old specimen of physical perfection who had just graduated top of his bud class. He was sitting with his arms crossed, biceps bulging against his crisp uniform, surrounded by 20 other fresh-faced SEAL candidates who looked like they could chew through steel cable. At the front of the room stood the man he was addressing, a 60-year-old guest instructor named Elias. Elias didn't look like a warrior. He looked like a drifter. His hair was thinning and gray. His face was a road map of deep weathered lines, and he wore a simple black t-shirt that exposed arms covered in faded, dark, chaotic ink. To Miller, this guy looked like a relic, a biker who had wandered onto the base by mistake. But Miller was about to learn that there are predators in the deep ocean that don't need to look pretty to kill. If you believe that wisdom is earned through blood and that we should respect the warriors who paved the way, stop what you're doing, hit the like button, and type respect in the comments right now. Let's see who understands the true cost of freedom. The briefing room at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado hummed with controlled energy. The air conditioning maintained a steady 68 degrees, fighting against the California sun that blazed outside the reinforced windows. Digital maps covered every wall, satellite imagery flickering with real-time intelligence feeds. Above the main screen, carved into dark wood, hung the team's ethos in bold letters. The only easy day was yesterday. The men occupying the tiered seating represented the newest evolution of special warfare operators. They were faster than their predecessors, stronger than any generation before them, sharper in ways that mattered in modern combat. They had trained with autonomous drones, studied advanced ballistic mathematics, mastered encrypted communication protocols that would have seemed like science fiction a decade ago. They felt untouchable. They felt ready for anything. Then Elias had shuffled through the door. He carried nothing that suggested authority or expertise. No leather briefcase full of classified documents. No sleek laptop with glowing logos. No tactical gear to establish credibility. Just a paper coffee cup from the base commissary and a spiral notebook so battered it looked like it had survived a shipwreck. The cover was stained with what might have been salt water, or sweat, or blood, maybe all three. The pages inside were wrinkled, the metal spiral bent at odd angles. He moved with an obvious limp, his left leg dragging slightly with each step, the kind of injury that never fully heals. He made no attempt to hide it. He placed his coffee on the podium with deliberate care, then stood, completely still. For 60 full seconds, he simply looked at them. His eyes moved from face to face, row by row, taking inventory. They were the color of storm clouds over the ocean, flat and depthless and impossible to read. That silence was when Miller decided to break the tension. The recruits had been expecting someone different. They wanted a Tier 1 operator fresh from the sandbox, someone with a thick beard and a chest full of ribbons, someone who could tell stories about kicking down doors in Fallujah or fast roping into compounds in the Hindu Kush. Instead, they got a guy who looked like he might fix air conditioners for a living. Miller's question was calculated, a small flex to establish dominance, to show the room he wasn't intimidated by some old man's staring contest. A few of the other candidates chuckled, a low rumble of approval spreading through the back rows. The tattoos covering Elias's exposed forearms were genuinely ugly. Not the artistic sleeve work you see on athletes and musicians today, all vivid colors and clean lines. These were dark and splotchy, the kind that looked like they had been applied with blunt needles and bad lighting. Jagged coordinates, crude symbols that bled into each other, random patterns that seemed to have no structure or meaning. Elias didn't react to the insult. His face remained perfectly neutral. He lifted his coffee cup slowly, took a single sip, set it back down with that same deliberate care. Then he looked directly at Miller. The silence that followed stretched and stretched, becoming physically uncomfortable. The chuckling died completely. "You like the artwork, son?" Elias asked. His voice was quiet, rough around the edges, like truck tires rolling over gravel roads. Miller shrugged, leaning back in his chair, projecting confidence he was starting not to feel. Just curious, he said. Usually we keep it professional. That looks chaotic, like a scrapbook with no order. Elias nodded slowly as if considering the observation. Then he stepped away from the podium and walked down the center aisle, moving closer to where the recruits sat. As he approached, they could see the texture of his skin more clearly. It wasn't just ink covering those arms. Beneath the faded tattoos were ridges and valleys, scar tissue that the ink had been used to camouflage. Burn marks, shrapnel scars, the topography of violence. Chaotic, Elias repeated softly. That's a good word for it. War is chaos. You boys train for the grid. You train for the plan, but the plan is the first casualty of contact. He stopped directly in front of Miller's desk. Miller straightened involuntarily, his arrogance flickering like a candle in wind as he met those flat gray eyes up close. They were predator eyes, shark eyes, empty of fear and completely focused. You asked why so many, Elias said. He rolled his left shoulder forward, exposing more of his forearm, pointing to a faded black line that wrapped around the muscle like a serpent. You see this one? Looks like a mistake, right? Like some drunk artist drew it in a back alley shop. Miller examined it. Yeah, he admitted. What is it? A river, Elias said simply. It's a timeline. 1989. Operation Just Cause. Panama. We were tasked with securing Paitilla airfield. The intelligence we received was wrong. Completely wrong. We weren't walking into a lightly defended airstrip. We were walking into a kill zone. The room had gone absolutely silent. Even the air conditioning seemed quieter. We were pinned down on the tarmac within seconds of insertion, Elias continued, his voice stripped of drama, just reporting facts. No cover anywhere. Heavy machine gun fire coming from 3 different positions. Interlocking fields of fire. Textbook ambush. My swim buddy, a kid from Michigan named Joey Ramos, took a round to his femoral artery in the first 30 seconds of contact. Miller felt his throat tighten. I dragged him behind the landing gear of a Learjet. Elias said, applied a tourniquet with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. But the fire was too intense. Every time we tried to move, they lit us up. We were trapped behind that plane for 4 hours. 4 hours watching Joey's face get paler. 4 hours listening to him talk about his daughter's 3rd birthday party he was going to miss. The tattoo, I did it myself 3 days after we got back to base. Used a sewing needle and India ink I bought from a street vendor. It traces the exact path his blood took across that concrete, from where he got hit to where he died in my arms. It reminds me that plans fail. They fail constantly. And when they do, you don't panic. You don't freeze. You hold the line. Miller swallowed hard but said nothing. Elias rolled up his other sleeve now, revealing his right bicep. He pointed to a cluster of 3 stars, crudely done, the points dull and uneven. How about these, he asked. You think I wanted to look like a general? Maybe I thought they'd look cool at the beach. No one made a sound. 1993, Elias said. Mogadishu. The word landed like a physical blow. Every person in that room knew the history. They had studied the battle in tactics class, watched the documentary, read the books. But reading about something and standing 2 feet from someone who had been there, who had survived it, were 2 completely different experiences. We weren't supposed to be the primary force, Elias continued. We were support, quick reaction. But when the Blackhawks went down, everything changed. We moved through that city on foot for hours. It was a 360-degree ambush. Every window, every rooftop, every alley. We ran out of water by hour 2. We ran out of ammunition by hour 5. We almost ran out of blood. He tapped the 3 stars with his index finger. 3 men in my squad didn't make it back to the hangar. Rodriguez, Chen, and a kid we called Preacher because he never cursed. I put these stars here to cover the shrapnel scars I took in my right arm, pulling a Ranger out of a burning Humvee. The metal is still in there. Doctor said taking it out would cause more damage than leaving it. Every time I lift something heavy, the scar tissue pulls. It hurts. And I'm glad it hurts because the pain reminds me that I'm still here, and they aren't. Elias stepped back, addressing the entire room now. Every recruit was leaning forward, eyes locked on him. The swagger and arrogance had evaporated, replaced by something like awe. You look at me and you see an old man, Elias said. his voice rising slightly, filling the space with quiet authority. You see faded ink and gray hair. You ask why so many tattoos? The answer is simple. I have so many tattoos because I have come home so many times. Each one of these is a receipt for a life I lived, a death I dodged, or a brother I buried. He pointed to a complex geometric shape on his wrist that had faded to almost nothing, just ghost lines on weathered skin. Afghanistan, Elias said. 2002. Takur Ghar, the mountains. The air up there is so thin you feel like you're breathing through a coffee stirrer. Every movement takes twice the effort. Your heart pounds in your chest even when you're standing still. We were hunting shadows in those caves, hunting men who knew that terrain better than we knew our own backyards. We were alone up there. No drone support because the weather was too bad. No satellite communications because the mountains blocked the signal. Just 6 of us in the cold. The cold that gets into your bones and stays there. We were operational for 12 days. We ran out of food on day 4. After that, we ate snow and stayed conscious on pure hatred. This mark right here, he traced the geometric pattern with his finger. It's the constellation Orion, the hunter. It was the only thing I could see clearly from the position where I lay for 48 straight hours, waiting for an enemy sniper to make a single mistake. My spotter fell asleep twice. I didn't. I couldn't. And on hour 47, the sniper shifted his position by 6 inches. He finally made his mistake. Elias looked directly at Miller again. The young man looked smaller now, diminished. You have clean skin, Enan, Elias said quietly. You have bright eyes and a strong back. You know the theory of war. You've memorized the tactics. You understand the principles. But you don't know the weight. You haven't carried the weight yet. Miller looked down at his hands, his face flushing red, but not with anger, with shame, with the sudden understanding of his own ignorance. I didn't know, Master Chief, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I apologize. I shouldn't have. I'm not a Master Chief anymore, Elias interrupted gently. I'm just Elias. The rank stayed on the uniform when I took it off. The ink stayed on the skin. At that moment, the heavy steel door at the back of the room swung open. Commander Vance entered, dressed in full ceremonial whites, the uniform so crisp it looked sharp enough to cut. The recruits immediately jumped to their feet, chairs scraping, bodies snapping to attention. Attention on deck, someone barked. Vance waved a hand dismissively. As you were, sit down. He walked to the front of the room, but he didn't look at the recruits. His eyes were fixed on Elias. His face showed something beyond professional respect. It showed reverence. He extended his hand. Elias, Vance said warmly, gripping the older man's hand with both of his own. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I said I would, sir, Elias replied simply. Vance turned to face the class. He took in their stunned expressions, the tension still thick in the air. He saw Miller, who looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. I see you've met the legend, Vance said. Gentlemen, you are looking at the founding architect of the tactical survival program you're currently struggling through. Before we had GPS units in every pocket, before we had thermal imaging drones, before we had real-time satellite feeds, we had men like Elias Thorne. He was operational with SEAL Team 6 before most of you were born. He has conducted missions in more countries than you can name. And he is the only man I have ever personally met who has been awarded the Navy Cross twice. A collective intake of breath swept through the room. The Navy Cross. Twice. That puts someone in the realm of legend. That puts someone beyond normal human experience. I asked him to come here today, not to teach you how to shoot, Vance continued, his voice carrying the weight of command. You already know how to shoot. You can put rounds on target better than 99% of the human population. I asked him here to teach you how to endure, because the technology breaks, the batteries die, the communications fail, the drones fall out of the sky, and when that happens, when everything modern fails, all you have left is what's inside your chest and who's standing next to you. Vance looked at Elias's arms, at the canvas of faded ink and hidden scars. Those tattoos, he said, are the only map you'll ever need to understand what real sacrifice looks like. He nodded to Elias with deep respect, then stepped to the side, yielding the floor. The hierarchy was crystal clear. Commander Vance ran this base, but in this room, Elias was the master. Elias walked back to the podium. He picked up his coffee, which had gone completely cold. He looked at Miller one more time. The young SEAL looked absolutely devastated. "Stand up, son," Elias said. Miller stood, his body rigid with nervous energy. "Sir," he began. "Don't sir me," Elias said, and for the first time, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. "I work for a living. You asked a question. It was a fair question. We all judge what we see. It's human nature. We make assumptions based on appearances. But in this line of work, those assumptions get you killed. You have to look deeper. You have to look at the eyes, not the paint job." Elias slowly rolled down both sleeves, covering the history written on his skin, covering the scars and the stories. He became just an old man in a black t-shirt again. "You want to know the real reason why I have so many tattoos?" he asked, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, forcing everyone to strain forward to hear. "Yes, Master Chief," Miller said. "It's to cover up the parts of me that are missing," Elias said. "Every time I lost a piece of my soul out there, I painted over it so I wouldn't have to look at the empty space. You boys are blank canvases right now. You're perfect. Unmarked. My job is to teach you how to stay that way for as long as possible. But make no mistake, if you do this job right, if you do it long enough, you will get marked. Maybe not with ink. Maybe not where anyone can see. But you will get marked." He picked up a piece of chalk and turned to the old-fashioned blackboard behind him. He drew a single vertical line. "This is you," he said. Then he drew a jagged, chaotic circle around it, the chalk scraping harshly. "This is the world." He turned back to them. "Survival isn't about conquering the world. It's about keeping that line straight while the world tries to bend it, break it, erase it completely. Now open your notebooks. We're going to talk about water procurement in hostile urban environments. And I don't want to hear a single word about apps or fancy filtration systems. We're going to talk about how to stay alive when the world wants you dead and all you have is your brain and your will." The room exploded with energy. Every recruit grabbed their notebook with an intensity they'd never shown before. Pens hovered over blank pages, ready to capture every word. Miller sat there staring at Elias with completely new eyes. He wasn't looking at a biker anymore. He was looking at a prophet. For the next 3 hours, Elias spoke. He didn't use military jargon or technical terminology. He told stories about thirst so profound it caused hallucinations. He described hiding in sewage pipes to avoid enemy patrols. He explained the psychological weight of being hunted by people who knew the terrain better than you ever could. And through it all, when he gestured, when he moved, the tattoos seemed to move with him, animating the stories, giving them texture and depth. The ink wasn't random. It was a living document of human endurance. When Elias finally said class dismissed, nobody moved. The bell rang, but they remained in their seats, reluctant to break the spell. Elias packed up his battered notebook. He finished the last drops of his cold coffee. He looked at them one final time and nodded. Then he turned toward the door. Miller shot up from his seat like he'd been launched. He practically ran down the aisle. "Master Chief, wait," he called out. Elias stopped and turned. "Yeah?" Miller extended his hand. His voice shook slightly. "Thank you. I'll never judge a book by its cover again. I promise." Elias took the hand. His grip was iron, shockingly strong for someone who looked so worn down. He pulled Miller in slightly, locking eyes. "Don't worry about the book, kid," Elias said. "Just worry about the story you're going to write. Make it a good one. And try to keep the ink off your skin if you can. It hurts like hell when it rains." He winked, just a flash of the young warrior he'd once been, and walked out into the California sun. The room stayed quiet for a long time after he left.